Hi, and welcome to the Everything Outbound webinar. My name is Mike Piddock. I'm joined again by Ben Bennett, the co-founder and CEO of Second Voice Pro. Hi, Ben.
Hey there, Mike, on the mic. How
Y-
you all right?
yeah, yeah, good. You?
Very well. Pleasure to be back.
Excellent. Well, this is our officially our episode one, as the last one was the pilot. And on episode one, we're going to be talking about landing in the primary inbox. Now, what does that mean? First of all, that is about if you're doing outbound sales through email, trying to get those emails to land in the main inbox of the recipient, the person you're trying to reach. We all know about spam folders, but there are also other ways that these email systems are now packaging and compartmentalizing the emails they receive. And very often people aren't seeing them because they're not landing in that primary inbox. It seems kind of a basic area, but so many companies are getting this wrong. And so Ben wanted to talk about some of the tricks and tips to make sure that that doesn't happen. So first up, we're going to be talking about domains. So from what I understand, Ben, what you're trying to do is you're actually recommending that outbound emails should come from a separate domain to the regular domain that you use day to day. Is that correct? Or can you go into more detail there?
So, when you are sending emails, you want to explore using different domains. Now, let's just cover what that is very quickly. Your web domain is your website. So, ours is secondvoice.pro. If we are doing any cold email outreach, which we do, we use an alternative domain, which might be secondvoice.co.uk, it might be svmail.com, it might be something entirely different. And the reason that we are exploring this is because there are a lot of domain health benefits here. So when you're doing cold email, you're essentially reaching out to strangers and they don't know you, they don't know your brand, and you might be deemed as a poorly timed message. They might have woken up on the wrong side of the bed and they might report you or mark you as spam. And if you're getting any negative feedback to a domain, then your domain service provider or wherever it's hosted may start to penalize that domain. So Google, as an example, when you are or if you are getting negative feedback from the people that you are emailing, it will negatively impact where your website gets ranked in the Google search engine results. And actually, it will start to reduce the amount of emails that you send from your day-to-day email to clients, customers, prospects, each other. So those emails will start to not reach the primary inbox as well, and it will have an impact on the day-to-day operations of what you're doing. So if you're looking for perfect, good structure, have a separate domain for your outbound sales emails, have a separate domain for your newsletter, have a separate domain for your tech support. Keep everything away from your core website and your primary inbox, the inbox that you're using for work all day, every day.
Okay, so let's say you've gone out, you've bought that secondary domain to use for this. There's then a whole bunch of setup that you have to do to make sure that it's configured effectively. And this means a lot of acronyms we're going to start using. But if you could take us through them and explain them like to somebody that just, okay, this is completely new to them.
So essentially, you should be doing this on your main domain as well. So what we want to do here is we want to let any recipient, we want to let all of our search engines, we want to let all of our firewalls, all of the people that are engaging with this brand and this email flow know that it is sent by a real human being from the brand that owns that domain, and that it is a legitimately set up outbound or communication tool. So there are three main settings we need to create, and these are found in your DNS settings within your registrar. So wherever you buy your domains, we use 123reg and Namecheap, GoDaddy, other services are available. But the idea is you can go in there, and you will need a little bit of technical expertise to know how to do this, and update three of the core records. So the first one is called an SPF record. The second is DMARC, DMARC, and the third is DKIM. So these records all do different things, but essentially It's around email policies. It's around identification and validation that that domain does belong to you as an organization, so that you've probably seen loads of fake emails from Amazon and PayPal. It just means that when you are receiving an email, you know it does belong to that organization. We can save the deep and technical around those DNS records for another day. But the things you need to look for to clarify: SPF, DMARC, and DKIM. Update all of those records, and a quick Google will show you exactly how you go and set that up, and apply those DNS records. And it does mean that when you are sending emails, the receiving servers will basically check whether you are legitimate, and it helps you get in that primary inbox because you are the person, you are the business, and it is representative of your brand. So that is really crucial. And we can come on to the fourth DNS record later when we start talking about how you're going to be sending emails. But the interesting thing here, Mike, actually is I work with a lot of clients in a consulting capacity, and there's some huge multinationals, FTSE listed, large organizations, that when we ran our own checks on how they were dealing with their emails, all cold emails were going out from the sales rep's main email address, and these DNS records were not set up. So not only was there a big risk of having their entire website shut down potentially if it was getting complained about a lot, but also most of the work that these salespeople are doing or marketing teams are doing in sending emails is never even being seen. So it's a complete waste of time unless you've got this stuff set up.
Yeah, it's surprising how often it's just not thought about. And one of the questions that arises then is, you're setting up and you're planning to send out emails from a different email address. As a salesperson, I would be wondering, well, what happens to the replies? How do I make sure that they're replying to this different email address, but I'm getting them quickly so that I can handle the follow-ups?
Yeah, well, I mean, it all depends on the infrastructure that you've got in a business. So, at a really basic level, if you're just running a bunch of Google addresses and you want to set up your new domain using the Google Workspace, one thing you could do for best practice is when you're setting up that new inbox, is just every email that gets received into your new inbox, just forward it to your real email address. And that just means that while emails are being sent from a new alternative domain or a sending inbox, everything that comes back to 1, 2, 10 different inboxes can then be automatically forwarded to your inbox if you want to manage it that way. Now, doing that is going to cause its own headaches. You're going to have a high volume of emails coming through into your inbox, and you can set up folder structures so that they automatically get put into a certain space so it doesn't completely explode your inbox, and making inbox zero a thing of the past. The other way of managing this is using email sending software, and there are a lot of tools out there, tools like Reply, I think even Apollo are doing this now, where you've got one inbox to manage all your responses from. So it sends from multiple, but it will come back to one centralized inbox.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. So for those of us that are old enough, this feels like The Wire when they discovered burner phones and they realized that they could just not call from the phone boxes, but would hand the mobile phones around. But now we've got all these burner emails,
Yeah,
but we can't just go use them like they did in The Wire. There's something more we've got to do to them. There's a whole process of email warm up before they become really useful. So
yeah.
let's talk about email warm up, because honestly, before I sort of came into the Second Voice Pro business, this wasn't something I was aware of. I'm sure many of my team were doing this, but it wasn't something that, as a founder, I even understood happened. So I'd love to have known this a while back. So tell me about it now.
Sure. So let's run with a couple of working examples. So why you need email warm up if you've just created a new domain and a new inbox is relatively simple. You want to avoid any red flags. So your email service provider, and let's just stay with Google for now. You could use Office 365, Microsoft, but if we're using Google, if you've just created ben@newdomain.com, and you start putting that into an outbound email approach, So all of a sudden you start sending anywhere between 50 to 200 emails from that inbox. Google will get a red flag to say no human is likely to create a brand new email address and have any real reason to be sending that volume of emails legitimately and organically. So what email warming does, and again, if you search for this, there are many tools out there that can do this for you. Is it will take over the sending and receiving of emails on your behalf automatically. So it will send emails off to other people's inboxes, and it will check whether it's landing in the inbox or getting marked as spam. And you will have emails come to you as well. So it starts to create some two-way dialogue with your inbox. So your email service provider will start to see that it is legitimate, but it also is the way that you can then determine whether the emails that you're sending are actually reaching somebody's inbox. And the more you do reach somebody's inbox, the more these emails are being read, opened, and engaged with, the more credibility your inbox has in order to send emails as being like a trusted source of relevant information. So you're giving yourself the best chance of landing in the inbox by warming up your new email address. You're testing it to see whether it is landing in the inbox, and you're also teaching your email service provider that it is a legitimate sending address, something that's not being used for just a blanket amount of spam. So what it will do very slowly, and you can change the rules on this, but it might send 5 emails on day 1, 10 emails day 2, 15 day 3, and then move up in increments. So it's slowly improving the velocity of the emails that it's sending just to build up its reputation, essentially. And an inbox and a domain with a positive reputation that is warm and that is functional is less likely to get flagged and closed down like most spamming accounts are. And I think it's really important here as well, just to differentiate between us doing cold email and outbound versus spam. What you need to be doing is emailing people with a deliberate business resource that they will have a benefit for, and only email their business email address. But rather than just throw thousands of emails out there in one go, which is also something we don't recommend doing. And just one other point on that volume piece is I wouldn't be sending more than 50 emails a day from any given inbox. So if you do need to send more than that, if you've got a large audience, set up more inboxes. We want to be flying under the radar of the email service providers here, just so that we can deliver the work that we need to do, share the good message of the products or services that you're providing, without getting red flagged or penalising your domains or your inboxes, or punish your own brand reputation.
And you mentioned multiple email inboxes there. That's where email rotation comes in as well.
Yeah, so email rotation is I don't think it's a particularly new thing, but it's an important thing. And what that essentially is if I've got ben.b or at ben at Benjamin at, I can have lots of different variations of an inbox for me. If you're sending out emails, inbox rotation is using a email sending software that takes it in turns. And if you're sending very similar emails from one inbox all of the time, again, your email service provider will start to pick up that this is being used for high volume marketing and outreach, and can penalize you for it. So what inbox rotation is very simply taking it in turns of all the different inboxes that you set up to send similar or slightly adjusted messages to your target markets.
Okay, and then as well as rotating inboxes, I think there's also a way of looking at the sender's email provider. So sending Google to Google and Microsoft to Microsoft. Is that something which you're aware of?
Yes, so this is a new one for me. So when you are sending emails, best practice is to take a email address that belongs with Microsoft and an email address that belongs with Google. So two of the biggest email service providers you can get. And the reason you get a mix of both is, and I only found this out recently, if you send a Microsoft owned inbox an email from your Google account, you're more likely to be penalized or punished and less likely to land in the inbox than if you send Microsoft to Microsoft. And the same happens in reverse. So if you're sending Google to Google, you've got a higher chance than if you're sending Microsoft to Google. So when you're doing inbox rotation, if you've got some Microsoft accounts, some Google accounts, there are tools out there. I think reply.io is one. There are others are available, but they will work out who is the recipient, who provides their inbox, and then use either the Microsoft or the Google address accordingly, so you've got a better chance of sending. And again, this comes down to who your market is, your target market. So if I'm selling into the FTSE 100, the likelihood is they'll be sitting on Microsoft products. If you're going into that SMB sort of mid-market below, you're probably going to get lots of Google accounts, just given the fact that it's quick to set up and very easily accessible. So have a look at what your prospective customers might be using. Get different inboxes powered by Microsoft and Google, and go and experiment and rotate those to make sure that you are trying. But remember, like, if you're a smaller business, you've got neither the bandwidth or the experience to do this. It's not going to be an ultra critical thing, but it is something that if you are treating cold outbound email as one of your key sources of pipeline generation and conversation generation, it's going to be fundamental. So nothing to panic about, but if you want to bring your A game, it's definitely some of the things you need to be exploring.
Absolutely. So so we've done this technical piece correctly. We've bought the new domains. We've set up all the DNS. We've set up new emails. We've redirected them. We've done email warming. We've put it on rotation. We're looking at different email providers. Technically, we are ready to go. And now we get to the point of writing those emails, running them through some technology to send. But even the writing of the emails is fundamentally important to making them land in that primary inbox. First of all, let's talk about some of the words which you shouldn't be using, because there are words in your titles that sort of flag things as spam. Is that an area to think about?
Yeah, most certainly. And I think it's looking at the language you're using. So if you're throwing out offers or discount or sales or revenue or anything remotely promotional or trying to drive commercial outcomes for clients, it's almost like Google and Microsoft pick up on this, right? So it's, if it looks like spam, if it sounds like spam, if it's like, hey, I've got an offer, we can give you a discount on so and so, the promotion only lasts for 24 hours, that's going to land in spam. If you're talking in really simple language, basic language of saw I noticed this thing happening in your world. Many companies like you suffer from problem X, Y, and Z given that situation. Companies A, B, and C have worked with us to achieve X, Y, Z outcome. Is this on your radar? All of that style of email is all around piquing curiosity and actually not assuming anything. We're not throwing offers at people. We're trying to start dialogue. So the way you write your emails, you want to try and remove any spammy and promotional and salesy language, and write your emails as if you were talking. There are tools out there, one of them, Lavender, which is an AI tool, which you can write your email and it will tell you whether it's too complex, too long, sentences are unstructured, it can't be read by a 14-year-old, so it needs to be softened, the language softened. So there's lots of things that you can do to help the content as well, and also changing your messaging and experimenting with subject lines, the calls to action at the bottom. I can send you some information if you want to receive it. Is it okay if I send it over? Is this a problem you're facing? Have you seen this in your business? Is this on your radar at the moment? All of these things you want to be testing to see where you're getting the engagement and what are the elements of that email sequence that are going to convert for you.
And we go back to technology now, because there's something with the wonderful name of Spintax. Again, a fairly recent discovery for me. Do you want to just talk us through that and how that helps you get that language right, and also modify the language for different scenarios?
Sure. So Spintax can be used for a few reasons, and Spintax is essentially a way of cycling different variations of saying things, replacing whole sentences at a time. So a very, very simple example of what syntax is if you put into one of your email templates, hi, hey, hello, the way it's structured is sort of every third email, you'll get the different variation. One will say hi, the next one will say hey, the next one will say hello. You could do that with whole sentences. You could do that with whole problem statements, calls to action, where it just changes the content ever so slightly, so that all the recipients are receiving a slightly different message. Now, this does a few things for you. It will enable you to see, as you research it, which content is being engaged with. If you're not doing a straight A/B test on your emails, you'll be able to see, of the replies, who's replying the most to when you said hi or hey, who's replying the most to call to action A or B. But the second element is that, as I said earlier, if you are sending emails from Google or Microsoft and they all have the same text and the only difference is the recipient's name, then the likelihood is that that email service provider will pick up the fact that you're using this for cold outbound and again penalize you for it. And it can shut down and suspend inboxes as well. So using syntax means that the content that is being used in the emails is constantly being cycled, not only between that one inbox, but you've also got the inbox rotation happening as well. So you can get a wide variety of variations on the email copy, as well as the different inboxes that are sending. And that should help fly under the flags of your email service providers, and also help you experiment on what message is going to land with your prospective audience as well. I do want to cover one other element as well when we're talking about tools that are sending emails on your behalf. And it does come back to a technical DNS record as well, in the fact that if you just send emails out of your new piece of software, it will be received by the recipient not looking like you all the time. So we need to create another what's called a CNAME record within your DNS settings. And whoever you're using as an email service provider, not an email service provider, an email sender, the platform that's going to actually push those emails out to your prospective audience, they will each have their own way of telling you how to do your own CNAME record, so that it always looks like it's coming from your email address and your domain. So it's an important point to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're only going to touch on it today because I think it's a whole different podcast in itself, and that's the importance of the data. So having the correct email addresses for the people, the companies that you're trying to reach out to. Do you want to touch on that? Just give us the 2 minutes overview, and we can preview the next session for people to come in and see the detail.
So this is opening up a can of worms here. So data quality is, it's becoming harder and harder to come across good quality data. So we need to think about how we're validating our emails and not just trusting what our data providers are sending us. Some of you might be collating emails from LinkedIn in some form or fashion. Some of you will be using tools like Apollo that are on the more affordable end of the spectrum for getting large volumes of data. There are more of the pricier tools like Bowhurst or Zoom Info, where you can access high volumes of contact data. So we use multiple sources because one of them doesn't have it all. They're all slightly different. They all do slightly different things in different ways. But what it's really important to do is find a way to validate that email yourself. So there are tools out there. If you just go and Google email validation, there are plenty of tools out there available where you just download your list from your data provider and then go and put them into a validation tool. And the reason we're doing this is what that tool will do is it will ping an email, not from you, just check that email address is real and it did reach an inbox. If it bounces back as the email is incorrect, it will let you know. And sometimes it will tell you it's not sure. Do not send emails to email addresses that aren't correct in the hope that it gets through, or email addresses where it's unsure, because is likely to bounce. And when an email bounces, what that means is it's not getting into the inbox because the inbox isn't a destination. It's like your postman turning up to put a letter through the door and there's no post box to put the letter through the door. There's nowhere for that letter to go. So if your email does bounce, again, the score coming back, you're sending lots of emails that are bouncing, your email service provider will see this and it will flag it. And again, the probability that you are doing cold outreach at scale, which is sometimes deemed against their terms of service, they can, if they choose to, close your inbox and domain if they want to. So we do need to operate very carefully, very efficiently, but ultimately, why would we want to be bringing in and sending loads of emails that aren't reaching the inbox anyway, right? We want to be knowing that any of the doors that we're knocking on are real people that are likely to actually respond to that email you sent.
Absolutely. Great. Well, that's a really quick summary, really useful. As I said, I think the subject of data and how to clean that data and enrich it and make it better is a perfect topic for the next session that we run. But hopefully this one's been useful. If you've got any thoughts or ideas about what we should cover next, please let us know either via LinkedIn or straight by email. But we thank you for listening, and thanks, Ben, for joining us again.
Pleasure as always.